My name is Lauren.
Erwin.
Nice to meet you. I think I've talked to you on the internet too. Who are you? Stacy. Yes. You're the ones from Korea, right?
Yes.
All right,
Yes.
you ready? All right,
I don't remember what I'm supposed to do.
I got you this in case you need to write on the way there. I just edited ours a little bit. I just edited ours. You ready? I'll get it.
Yes.
I'll get it rolling.
Yes.
If everybody's ready, we'll go ahead and get started and get to our awesome presentation here in just a few minutes. We first of all, we just want to thank everybody for coming out and being a part of the club. This is kind of a young club. The first few meetings, this is the biggest meeting turnout that we've had. So, thank you guys for coming, and want to thank one of our members, Hudson, for allowing us to use the facility and everything. Couple things. One of our members, Mason, isn't here, so I'll just kind of talk about his stuff. We have. Oh my God, I can't breathe. So we have member merchandise. It's pinned at the top of our Facebook page under announcements. It's under announcements. You click on it, it goes to Teespring. There's shirts, there's hoodies, tank tops, stickers, everything like that. So if you're interested, you can pop on there, and every color in the book. There's purple, green, yellow, pink, black.
And I don't know if everybody's got a chance to look at this little board, but I tried to throw together some of our stuff that we're doing here. And on it, I think I put a QR code to scan. If you haven't been to see the merchandise, you can scan that little code. It takes you straight to that website.
And then I don't know if everybody's familiar. We have a band platform that we do all our selling and everything on for the club. If you need help getting on it or have a question, you can get with me or John or one of the others, and we can kind of guide you or get you an invite to it. There's, a lot of specialized sales and everything that goes on there. And then what we'll do is turn it over to John for a club update. He's just gonna, go over where we're at in the club and, what's going on with this.
All right. So like Donna said, first off, I'm John Tyler. But like Donna said, we're a young club. We've been trying to get going for a couple of years, but with the pandemic and everything, it's kind of put us in a spot. So thank you all for all coming out. And we've really glad to be able to get a spot that we can meet, because the places we tried meeting before said, you can't bring this, you can't have that, you can only have this many people, you can't have food, you can't have sales, different stuff. And here we're pretty fortunate to have more freedom, I guess. So we started the Breeders Awards program, kind of trying to roll it out, and did it a little online. Now that we can start having in-person meetings, we can start bringing in people who can actually look at the fish and do the stuff here in person. Again, on that little board, I've got some information. They got the rules down below it. There's sheets you can fill out to turn stuff in. We're looking to do other stuff, and we're open to ideas of what to do. We're kind of modeling after some other clubs of what they're doing and what they're having success with. And so I got some sheets back there with some different ideas of what I've seen other clubs do and been successful. If you've got ideas, also let us know. Stuff that you'd like to do that's on the sheet, let us know about that too, and we'll try to get some of that stuff done. Yeah, on that board, we've also got a QR code for the band app you can scan to get into it. A QR code for the Facebook group if somehow you figured out how to get here and aren't part of our Facebook group, it's on there too.
Word of mouth.
Well, I had somebody show up at the swap that didn't have Facebook, didn't get on the internet, but they stumbled across it somehow and showed up at the swap. So I was glad about that. And hopefully, there's people that don't do internet, don't do Facebook. Hopefully in the future we can get more word of mouth out. At the end, we'll have a little mini auction, and we can go over that a little bit towards the end. It's nothing real formal, just kind of simple. And I guess that's all I've got. Do you have anything else before we get to the speaker?
No, just to bring more attention to the files and everything. All our club files are like listed under Facebook, but they're all like, we printed off all the ones that you might need. In particular, the BAP program. You know, we figured some people might want a paper copy, and you can just handwrite it, take a picture, and send it off to John for that. We just want to kind of make it as easy as you can, and encourage everybody to be a part of the BAP program.
And if you're not familiar with the Breeders' Awards program, kind of the idea behind it is to spread the fish among people. Like, there may be some fish that you wouldn't normally see in a pet store somewhere else that somebody breeds it, that we can pass on to somebody else, and also to share the knowledge. Somebody has success at breeding this fish, you get the information from them of how they did it to send on to somebody else. And a lot of y'all are doing some great stuff in your hobby, and this helps bring attention to what you're doing and recognize and get you some awards for what you're already doing.
We could go ahead and move on. You want to go ahead and do the shrimp? Or
Yeah.
ready for that?
Brandon's going to be speaking on shrimp, so we'll go ahead and let him get started if he's ready.
Evening, everybody.
Whoa.
I plan on talking for a couple minutes. If it's all right, I'll pull my mask down. I don't want to offend anyone. I just want to make sure that that's all right. I'll stay behind my barrier back here. So as you said, I'm Brandon, Frankfurt. Mostly a guppy and shrimp guy, a little bit of everything too. Mike's got me into killifish. I do some pistos, stuff like that. So,
Any cichlid?
a little bit.
A little bit.
I used to be an African cichlid guy for many years, and then kids and smaller budgets and smaller footprints gave way from 120s down to 20 gallons and guppies and shrimp.
Oh, way.
All right, so we'll call this ornamental shrimp keeping in Kentucky. The idea basically is I'm going to talk a little bit about shrimp in general, a little bit of an introduction, but then mostly what it's like keeping shrimp here, specific to us. Recent timeline. Most of these species were kind of documented and discovered back in the 1850s, but as far as hobby-wise is concerned, most of them got popular sometime in the 90s. Pictures aren't super clear. Yeah, so thank you.
Does that help?
The two over on the right here, that's a ghost shrimp in the hobby. A lot of biologists would call them a grass shrimp or glass shrimp. There's several different names. There's about 25 different species. This one is actually native to Kentucky, to the Appalachian Mountains. So there's a lot of different ghost shrimp. They first got popular as a feeder species, introduced to people because at the time it was just hard to keep them alive. And so if you were going to breed them in big numbers and they weren't going to live very long, make use of them. Slowly, around that same time, 60s, 70s, things like that, as you saw those, wild type Neocaridina were being collected in Taiwan, but we didn't see them here for a long time. 90s again, Amano shrimp, which is the one you got down here in the bottom, started getting marketed here in the U.S. as an algae control specialist. There's a bottom feeder that will help clean up the tank and work on hair algae, things like that. By 2002, it was actually November 2002, we started seeing imports of low-grade cherry shrimp from Taiwan to the U.S. Around that time, they had really gotten popular in Asia. Kind of a similar story to me and my cichlids. Smaller footprints for apartments have led people to stop breeding giant koi and have started specializing in tiny shrimp. By 2005, PetSmart, which I'm sure most of you guys are familiar with, carries cherry shrimp. It didn't take very long for them to become common enough in the U.S. that farms were farming them in Asia and then importing them to the U.S. through distributors. Shortly thereafter, about 2008, we started seeing crystal shrimp, Taiwan bee shrimp, other more fancy species and varieties of ornamental shrimp showing up in the U.S. for the first time. So these, which in the light is not great, but it kind of illustrates the point, are wild type Neocaridina. This is what they were collecting in the Taiwan streams. And it is a shame it's not quite dark enough to see, but more or less what you're getting here is very faded colored shrimp. You get some that are red, some that are brown, some that are blue, but in general, they're all shades of clear, not dramatic to look at. And up close, I've definitely seen some really nice photography of wild Neo-type shrimp. But from far back, and they tend to kind of, just get faded because there's not a whole lot of color and detail going on. So we had progress. The low grades here are what we started seeing imported back around 2002 or so. This would have been what they had common in Taiwan, probably around 99 or so. The Sakura grade has become pretty common. That's what a lot of people now are referring to as Singapore cherry shrimp, just because by the time they got carried over to Singapore, the red lines were really stable. Red was definitely the first color of the Davidii Neos to get stabilized. So we've got up to a higher Sakura grade. The fire red and the painted fire red, all it is just the shell is getting more opaque and darker red. In the fire red, you may still see a yellow saddle if a female's carrying eggs. That may still show through that shell. By the time you get to the painted fire red, it's completely opaque. The saddle or eggs don't show at all anymore through the shell. The skirt is completely opaque, so you can't see if she's buried, if she's carrying eggs under her spinets. Around 2006, 2007, a new red shrimp, if you will, was introduced to us. We got Bloody Mary, which are actually, they're still a Neocaridina, but they're not from the same line as the cherry shrimp. These are a brown shrimp that a mutant red thrown off of that has been isolated, and they're a deeper, darker red than all the other cherry shrimp. If you cross them, you get wild shrimp. They are not from the same sides of the family tree. I'll explain that here in just a second. All of this interest specialization breeding has led to a lot of variety. I won't try to go through the whole list, but the main idea of this slide is that we've got 3 large buckets that the hobby shrimp have ended up in. This is not a comprehensive list. We did see those ghost shrimp and those Amano shrimp on that first slide that are not listed here. There is also several different filter feeders, vampire shrimp, bamboo shrimp, things like that are not in this lump group, but these are the 3 general categories that we'll talk about today. And usually when you hear people talking about shrimp, they'll mention them in one of those forms, either Neos, Caridina, or Solesi. Within the Caridina, we've also got tigers and crystal shrimp, and I'll get into a little bit about what those are in a second. This is kind of more illustrating that point. We've got several different types of shrimp that are available now. They do have different requirements as far as water parameters in most cases. That doesn't mean they don't overlap a good bit. A lot of them are compatible with each other, just not all. The good part about that is a lot of it does line up with our water here in Kentucky. Some of them not especially well, but there are ways to get around it. And we'll kind of dive into a little bit about the parameters for each of those. As you notice, most of your categories are saying they can take moderate water hardness, but they require the soft water for the crystal and bee shrimp. And most of them are pretty wide range of temperatures. That's a good part about shrimp is it's rare that you find shrimp that are required to be heated. Almost any shrimp can be kept room temperature. With regard to temperature, if you crank up the heat, you're going to get faster metabolism. They are, for all intents and purposes, a water bug, right? They're a heteropoda. So if you speed up that metabolism, they're going to grow faster, they're going to eat more, they're going to have shorter lifespans. and you tend to get less coloration just because that growing process was so fast and stressful that they didn't have a whole lot of extra energy to devote to how good they look. With a little bit cooler temperature, they tend to grow a little bit slower, but you tend to get a little bit better coloration. It takes a little bit longer to get them to breeding age, though. You're going to invest more time and more food before you get shrimp out of shrimp. A word on water hardness. I won't bore you with water chemistry online, but for people who don't talk about water hardness a lot, for most fish, it's not a big deal. You can get away with it. I'm sure as Mike knows that some of the peak breeders, they want soft water and low pH. But with shrimp, it starts to become a little bit more detail oriented, that you have to have water that matches what parameters for what type of shrimp you're trying to keep. So in general, around here, we have either what we'd consider a moderately hard or a hard water. It's not uncommon to see usually between 3 to 4 KH and around 7 to 8 GH hardness out of the tap. Our pH is anywhere from 7.4 to 7.8, 7.9. Most of our water systems are treated with both chlorine and chloramine. So I do recommend you treat your water with water conditioners. I know a lot of people have relied on older methods of just letting the water air for a while or sit out in sunshine, which does deactivate chlorine. It does not break down chloramine. So if your plant is supplementing with chloramine, even if it's only part of the year and you don't know what part of the year it is, you may be introducing chlorine in the tank, which even then when your dechlorinator gets hold of it, it's going to create ammonia when it breaks down to chloramine, and then you've got ammonia spikes. So yeah, I do recommend treating your water first. Aging it for a couple of days doesn't hurt. Not everybody that keeps shrimp does that, but I know a lot of people that do. You put the water treatment in it, let it sit in a bucket for 3 or 4 days, and then throw it in. It's probably excessive, but I do it myself, partially because I'm lazy and it takes me that long to get to the water change. But it also makes sure that your water is room temperature. You don't have to worry about heating or cooling, water when you've already put it in the bucket if it's been sitting there in the room for 3 days. This is a kind of broad requirement or parameter requirements for those buckets of shrimp. The Neocaridina over on this side, as you can tell, are much more forgiving. They can tolerate a pretty wide variety of parameters. I've known people to lose Neos in odd places before, come back and find them thriving. I've trapped them back inside overflow compartments, inside filtrations, systems, stuff like that, had them survive. John's wearing an Aquarium Co-op shirt. A story that Corey tells is he lives in Edmonds, Washington, which is right up on the Canadian border. And he raises Neos outside in the summer. And a couple of years ago, he accidentally left a tub, a Rubbermaid tub full of Neocaridina outside over winter in Washington. He didn't realize his mistake until mid-February, and there was 2 inches of ice on top of it. And he looks down and sees red movement under the ice. And he's like, what's in this tub? I thought this was empty. He lifts the sheet of ice, and there's not only Neos, there's more than he left months ago. They've bred in, freezing water. Not recommending that for yours, but I'm just saying that it's an example of extreme adaptation on the part of these shrimp. The Caridina are a lot more picky. In general, they want a little bit cooler water. If you get them real hot, they're going to get finicky. They like high DO, dissolved oxygen, and it's just hard to keep oxygen in warm water. The warmer water gets, the less oxygen it's going to have. In general, they need a lower pH and softer water. They often take what people use as reverse osmosis, RO water, or what I oftentimes use is rainwater. Does just as well to keep pH and softness down. Kentucky, of course, is famous for hard water. We've got lots of calcium from the limestone deposits, but rainwater is a good way to balance it. And of course, it's pretty abundant, especially around here right now. Solesci shrimp are a little bit more specialized, but honestly, some of my favorite. They are particularly well adapted to Kentucky water. High pH, hard water, throw rock hard limestone water and they're happy. The problem with Solwezi is you have to keep them hot, 82, 83 degrees. And they are really, really hard to feed. They don't like commercial food. You have to have a tank that's pretty much covered in algae, and not a whole lot of algae likes to live at an 8.0 pH and at a high temperature, so it takes a while to get there. Usually your tank's going to have to be really well seasoned before you're going to get Solwezi to thrive and reproduce. It's a trial and error game. I've failed more times than I've tried, but I'll keep trying. But for the main bulk of our talk today, we'll stick to Neos, just because that's what most people around here want to buy. That's what's most commonly available. It's probably what's most easily raisable in our water. And there's lots of variety of them. It's a little bit faded, so it's hard to see all the colors, but pretty much, any color of the rainbow, there are Neocaridina at this point. They have all been bred down lines descending from one color or another. This chart shows a similar kind of thing, how they started with a particular wild shrimp, the yellow strain, the orange strain, the red, the chocolates, the blues, etc. The problem is with Neo, if you keep them together, if you have this branch of the family tree and this branch of the family tree, and you put them back together, you lose the branch. They revert back to the wild types within a generation or two, and you don't get interesting mixes. You just lose your bred shrimp that people spent 2 decades creating. It's not that that's wrong. A lot of people like what they call Skittles tanks. They throw a bunch of different colors in there and let them go wild, and more power to them. The wild shrimp, like I said, are interesting to look at. It's just you lose that breeding real fast. The good news is that people have made some really cool not cherry shrimp. It's hard to see, man. I wish it was a bit better. We've got dark blues, we've got dark browns, you've got the dark red from the Bloody Mary. There's a bunch of what they call, you hear it pronounced different ways in the hobby, really or Riley, R-I-L-L-I shrimp. All it means is there's a clear section in the middle of the abdomen. There's red, there's blue, there's black, there's orange. Any color that there's Neo, there's really a Riley shrimp of them too. And so it makes for cool variety. Red, of course, like I said, was first, the one that was isolated first and has been the most stable for the longest. Blue came after that. Yellow was next, and from yellow we get both orange and green. Green is probably the newest variety that's been traded a lot recently. They are also the least stable that's most commonly sold. It's not uncommon for your green shrimp to drift back to yellow or to turn brown on you, things like that. It's a little bit less, just been around a little bit less long than the other colors. On that same chart, you saw other Neocaridina, the palmata. These are the pearl shrimp. And most of them are fairly faded. They still resemble wild types, but they do interbreed with the Neocaridina davidi. So it gives you what you saw on the chart as jellies. They're a lighter colored, so instead of the dark blue, you get a sky blue. Instead of a dark red, you get a pink. They tend to fade out the color. But they have no trouble breeding with the davidi. But in general, they're a Neo at another type. Feeding. I feed a variety of stuff in my shrimp tanks. I keep them with guppies, so I tend to throw everything in there. I'm throwing flake food that the guppies eat, and then it drops to the bottom and they eat that. I throw sinking pellets that are intended for bottom feeders. I use Hikari algae wafers if I have those. I do a lot of just fresh vegetables. My kids especially eat a lot of cucumber and carrots. And so I end up chopping it up and putting it on a plate at snack time, and then half of it doesn't get eaten, and anything that doesn't get eaten gets tossed in the tank. Cucumber, kale, and spinach especially are really, really appropriate food for shrimp. They're high in calcium and high in magnesium, which is key to their shell. Making their carapace is a big part of shrimp nutrition. You can get a lot of different kinds of specialized foods, and I do buy them sometimes, like these snowflakes. They're great. Those are made from soybean bran. It's like the husk off of soybeans. You throw them in there and the pellet like explodes. Within a few seconds, it's like tripled in size and just falling everywhere. And the fish love it, the shrimp love it, all that. But they're really expensive. That packet's about this big, about 2 ounces maybe, and it was like $15, $16 on Amazon. So that they're not cheap. A lot of people make their own shrimp lollies, grind up dehydrated vegetables, bee pollen, spirulina, algae, whatever you got that's, dandelion, anything, and dip chopsticks or skewers in the wet material and then dry it, desiccate it, stick it in an oven, bake it, whatever you want to do. Stick it in there and it sticks in the ground. The problem with fresh vegetables is they want to float. So you got to sink them somehow, either stick a fork in them, or if you want, you can blanch them, throw them in some boiling water for a couple minutes and then throw them in some ice water. If you have a lot of tanks, it's a lot of work.
I use Bell fishing sinkers with a little clip on it,
Perfect.
easy to see.
I like keeping shrimp and fish, and the targeted feeding is always an issue because your fish are just going to be more aggressive and they're going to have access first. So getting food to the bottom of the tank is kind of part of the game, I guess. You're always going to invent new ways to do it. It's probably a little faded, but let's try and see how well this is going to work. This is actually some Riley shrimp feeding one of my ember tetras. They're sitting there taking apart the pellet, flinging off food, and the ember's waiting patiently for his pieces. The embers are pretty lazy. They will not eat off the bottom, but they will sit there and let shrimp feed them all day. A word on molting and why hardness is such an issue. So a shrimp's carapace, their shell, gets shedded off every time they grow. They have to get rid of it. And it breaks down the middle of their back here. The problem is it's a lot like a fingernail as far as material wise. If it's too thin, it just bends. It doesn't want to pop in half. If it's too thick, they can't break it because it's just too hard. If your water is real soft, the shell is going to be real thin and they can't get it off. If it's real hard, it's gonna be real thick, and same thing, they'll be stuck inside of it and they can't escape their shell and they'll die. Molting failure is usually what kills shrimp. Young shrimp that are growing, of course, molt a lot more often than older shrimp. Once they hit a certain full-grown stage, molting almost completely stops. When it fails, you see with this, it's kind of harder to see in the picture, but what shrimp geeks often refer to as a white ring or a ring of death, and usually it's a sign that the molt has failed, and that's what has killed the shrimp. It's just kind of common to see. Sexing them. Females are going to be much bigger and much darker. If you see them from the side, they're usually pretty easy to see. If they have a saddle, a yellow-looking shape on their back, kind of a diamond shape, that's eggs, pretty good sign that they're a female. And they also will have eggs tucked under their skirt. They have spinnerets that go underneath the shell. And so when the pair have mated, the next time she molts, she will transfer those eggs from the inside of her shell to underneath her new one and carry them. She'll fan them for about 30 days, keeping them oxygenated until they hatch. And they are hatched or born fully formed, live born. I would use, on my BAP sheet, I literally said they were live bear because I didn't know how else to describe it. They are eggs, right? But they don't lay them and wait for them to hatch. When she releases them, they are fully, shaped baby shrimp. They'll get larger, but that is the shape that they will always be. And it's pretty cool to watch. This is a buried shrimp and what it looks like in those spinnerets, and she's carrying them. As they get larger and the closer she gets to releasing them, you can tell she struggles. New moms are prone to dropping them. They take some practice. They'll get better at it with time. If they do drop them, you can grab the eggs, or if a shrimp molts while still buried, you can grab the molt and stick it near water flow, and the eggs will still have a decent hatch rate. May not get them all, but you'll still get something out of it in most cases. So it's worth it if you ever run into the situation. It's not worth, it's worth a shot at least. All right, so back to that parameter slide, just to kind of show us our buckets again. The next one we're going to jump into is the crystal shrimp. Those are the ones that came after the Neos. Here's some red crystals, here's some black crystals. Bright colors, they interbred really well. So if you mix crystals or bees of any kind, you don't get brown, you get weird varieties of whatever color they were, which is fun to see. But they do require that low pH and soft water, which around here is an issue. You can either accomplish that with a active substrate, something like fluval stratum or ADA Amazonia soil, which will lower the pH of the tank. You can also do it with peat moss, supplements to add to the tank to bring the pH down and to eat up some of the water hardness. Because they don't turn brown in a very not so they're not. But private parties, Right, but they are all problem. And it's rewarding. Problem is, these I start and it's like what I'm trying to do, start with, right, white, but there's four different traits, quality. After I thought, problem is that time, readers on five are that right. Oh, so more on public. I said progress. I in that time, what was that? Like, why did I? They're now just off the last. Uh, and $5. Problem is 5 years. And that's right. That's guys. This uh, uh, $70. That sells pro. This is three of them. Stimulus check. Now, that email the email strike. Yeah, they're really cool. Facts, right? All of them are out of water, but you know, yeah. Not everybody's on the same line. But yeah, that's all. Here's wait a year and a half. No, you guys- Uh, sure, sure, yeah. EOS, pretty much anything you're keeping fish on, you can keep EOS on. They don't really care. Because of the nature of the food, if you're using big porous gravel, it's going to fall down between the gravel more often. You're going to end up with excess crap and substrate. You can use feeding dishes. A lot of people do. I don't. I have a lot of tanks and not enough time to deal with feeding dishes. Basically, you take any kind of little short glass dish, candle holder, something like that. Put it in the tank, leave it there. When it's feeding time, you take a tube and you lower it down there, and you put the food in the tube, and it drops into the dish. And then you targeted feeding into that tube, and that way it doesn't get all over the place. If you really, really want to, you can suck it back out in a couple hours to make sure that it doesn't out with water on each place. Do that. Personally, I have 17 tanks of shrimp, and all of them have a mixture of black diamonds, pole flat, and eco. I don't use much. It's a couple of rocks thrown on top just because I have some. I don't buy much complete anymore. The black diamond pole flat is my favorite substrate for the last $9 for a 50-pound bag of Tractor Supply. It's the silica mineral when they crack coal, when they're cooking coal, you make glass. It precipitates a lot of crap out of the coal. It's not coal, and all of that silica, that glass comes out of there, is basically sand. There's a lot of iron, boron, nickel. It's full of minerals, metals. It's a little oily from the machines that grind it all up because the machines have to be lubricated. When I buy it, I take it and dump it in a 5-gallon bucket, stick a water hose in the bucket, and run it until you get that rainbow sheen on top of the water. You just let it flow off. I'll kind of poke the hose around, stir it up, and after a few minutes, the sheen is gone. It'll go away. There's probably still some organic in there, but sorry. It's actually sandblasting medium. People use it to clean off material. But it's like why you buy a 50-pound bag of it for cheap. Some people I've seen actually take magnets and drift through it, and you'll get a ton of iron back out. I guess they're concerned about it once you decide to pay. I have a lot of plants, including red plants. And red plants, you have to supplement iron, putting squirt bottles of iron in the tank all the time. So I've been concerned about the iron. Oh, it's dark black. The Eco Complete is gray. That's black. Yeah, it's a very shiny dark black color. I didn't mean to sell Filtmax, sorry, but yeah, it's cheap. That's my remainder. It's cheap and it works great. It's for the no, it's not. It's inert, so it's not going to lower or raise pH. It's a little bit heavier than a lot of the Eco Complete and the heavy dependent substrate. So I find it's easier to get stuff to stay to plant in. That's when I first kind of discovered I was using it mixed with Eco Complete because Eco Complete's hard to get stuff to root in. It wants to come up. And to me, it was easier to bury it in sand, tap it with Eco Complete, get the look up for that. That's your look. And so I kind of quit. Like I spread the Eco Complete around, just kind of conform the part. I go black sand. In general, the darker shrimp, like dark blue, get darker blue on a dark substrate. Yeah, which makes it more color. It means you're not going to see them quite as well. So if you really wanted your blue shrimp to pop, you probably would put them on a white sand. But all of my tanks have the same sand. Perfect. I've noticed a lot of the shrimp. It's like guppies and any other community. We ship stuff back and forth to each other constantly. You can guess that it's but a lot of times the bags have pool sand in the bags. And get it in there. Well, and people farming shrimp when they're doing big pots, they're not going to go out.
Well, I love blue shrimp.
Right. Yeah. You see a lot that are raised 5-gallon drums or in IBC tote containers, like big, and so they're not putting, expensive very sand. They're making it free.
Yeah.
I have in the past. In recent years, I've switched to oak just because they're free. I collect oak leaves in the fall and just keep bags stuffed under a cabinet. And when I also have snails in most of the tanks, and so the snails do most of the work breaking down the leaves. And when they get done with the leaf, I throw another one in there. But it provides a little bit of tannins. It provides a little bit, buffer for the acids, the bacteria that they're looking for, botanicals. Indian almond leaves are great. We just don't have them available locally. I couldn't find them there that they were reasonably expensive. Yeah, they're great. Yeah. Well, and what the craziest thing is when I looked into it at one point, the Indian almond leaves that we're mostly shipping in from Asia are coming from like Puerto Rico, Bahamas. Like they're coming from the Caribbean. I'm like, wait. So the Chinese guys are shipping in leaves raked up in the Bahamas. And then we're shipping them back to the United States through Amazon in little bags. It's kind of wild. But there's a channel on YouTube, Mark's Aquatics. This Scottish guy. He's kind of crazy, but he does all kinds of cool stuff. I like him a lot. He uses bricks for his little shelters because they're free and they have holes in them. He's like walking around Scotland, bricks are just everywhere. He's like, you can get bricks. He uses cinnamon bark for his botanicals a lot of times. He'll go to the the Asian grocery store and buy like a 5-pound bag of cinnamon bark, like a big chunky bark. Boil it for like 2 hours, make cinnamon tea out of it, and then take the bark and throw it by the handful in the tank, and the shrimp just go wild on it. See them just attack it. And so honestly, if I had free cinnamon, I'd probably do that too. But yeah, honestly, that's for most cases, they're shrimp, right? They're going to eat whatever's available. These people use banana stems, a lot of different kinds of seed pods, lotus pods, mulberry leaves, nettle, horse nettle, any kind of nettle you can get hold of, they love. Grape leaves, grape, anything. They're kind of detritus feeders, right? They're not really eating the plant material, I think, as much as they're eating the stuff that grows on it as it breaks down. So when the little bacteria start munching away at the edges, the shrimp are cleaning that off. And so it doesn't really matter what it is as long as it breaks down. 60 days? Yeah. They carry the shrimplets for about 30 days. So really, when she releases them, they're kind of 30 days old at that point. They'll be pretty tiny for a good, 30 days or so. And then they'll be juveniles for another 30 days. And by that point, by the time they're a half-inch long, like I said, usually you can tell apart by that point too. The males be less colored up, skinnier, kind of their abdomen more triangle shape, almost like the tail of a plane. Whereas the females have a lot more curve to them and a big saddle, and usually a lot darker color. So you by that point. No? Okay. Sorry, I didn't talk too long. And I am not a breeder commercially or whatever, but I oftentimes have shrimp. If I don't have it, you all are looking for something, let me know. Maybe it's a club. I'll find what you need or what you're looking for, or put you in touch with somebody who's got it. I've been disappointed. Our local pet stores are still not really carrying much. That's impressive. You'll see some orange shrimp every now and then, what they call rainbow shrimp, like a pet store pet spot. They're kind of higher price. They're $6-7 per shrimp, and they're not the best health. Find them pretty a lot better. And while I had all here, I had a conversation with John yesterday about this stuff and just mentioned this. He was like, what? So I'm saying in front of everybody, what do I talk about? We don't want to cut it on. Does everybody hate duckweed? I don't know if it's a problem for everybody else, but especially if you trade shrimp a lot in mail, you're going to get bags with duckweed. Like that's bag. So even if you don't intentionally put duckweed, you're taking good. I got 2 of these little pumps off of Amazon for like $7. I bought them because I have a tub pond that I sit out the backyard, and I wanted to that. One day, I've seen a guy power head this several years ago, and I don't know what. So what I did was I took a plastic Willys cup, stuck a piece of tubing on this little pump, shoved it through a hole, cut some slits, stuffed some filter cloth on top of it. I'll take this and a chip clip and clip it to the side of my tank and let it sit like that. Duckweed flows into the cracks, the pump pushes the water out the bottom. And I did this earlier when I had time before it'll scoop out, quart jars in half an hour. It doesn't get rid of all of it. I mean, it's going to be in nooks and crannies. It's going to, in my case, it's in the hardwoods everywhere, so it'll be back 2 weeks later. But makes me share that. I have to say, for a $3 10-minute project. People tell me that they think they're duckweed to goldfish, to chickens.
I actually tried.
Really?
Just no.
anybody don't, maybe all know, if you're a cyclic guy named Charles, he is a farm out in Goliad, Texas. And he always says that if you ever want to get rid of duckweed, we have to find commercial viability. We need to find a good market for duckweed and it'll disappear. He was like, if you find a use for it, it'll go away on its own. So that was his goal. He said, I don't actually want to sell duckweed. He said, we just need to figure out why we want to sell duckweed. Thanks a lot, guys. You all good night.
All right, so for the people that have brought stuff, if you haven't already, just so that we get a list of what we got, we got some of these sheets over there that you can put it on, and write on your bag, you know, what it is, what you know about it. Okay, maybe not everything you know about it, but, you know, if it's 7 mixed guppy and that type of stuff. And then kind of, I've got like on the thing a code. So the code, I said, just, you know, your initials or something so we can tell who the money goes back to, which sheet to look at. So like on this one, I've lost the guppy. So I've got my initials JAT2 because it's the second one on my list. And then we've got some stuff that was donated to the club to auction. And the way that we're going to do the auctions, I'm kind of mirroring off the clubs. Unless the people say that they want to, you know, make as a donation to the club or whatever like that, we'll do 75% to the seller, 25% back to the club. We'll bid in whole dollar increments, so count pennies, stuff like that. And I've got like copies of the rules back there if you wanted to read through more detail for next time or whatever. And then we don't have like really any minimum bids on it, so you know you may get something for a good deal or something may go for a higher price than what you're used to. So we'll give people a few minutes if they want to look at stuff or if they have stuff they want to set out or get forms filled out. And then we've not done one of these auctions before, so be some growing pains probably. But if anybody wants to volunteer to be an auctioneer or to run stuff around, what we'll do is we'll auction the stuff off and say if you win the bid by rate, say yeah you want to get on. And if you win it, just tell us your name and we'll write it down. Right. And then we'll bring in what you want, and then at the end, everybody can settle up on the money. We'll take the money, get the cuts out the sellers. But we'll give it a few minutes so that y'all can look at the stuff and get everything situated. Yeah. Well, like here, they grab whatever. Okay. So, fine. Yep. Okay. I'm glad you reminded us this week. Getting everything together.
If I check it out, the form stuff, that, you know, the board member.
I'll look at like what the Cincinnati club do, what the global club do, what different clubs are in.
Yeah.
I like that. Let's try that.
I'm about to auction James Moss. I've been growing that since December 4th, just for him.
So
We're gonna his own tank.
I don't know if
These are the end result of my.
Yeah, no, he wanted 30.
And I was like, dude, I got 15 for you. That's all I got. You might know.
There's a lot.
I got, well, I just
They
figured
honestly- Uh, it's much fun. Repairers, sellers, you got the shrimp. Put up your whatever you want to buy and set a time when it ends. That's where you can see like.
Oh, I was crying. And all now I want to save is my breeder. But like my little embers,
Yes, they have a.
there's their tails, they've had this whole fun. And it's just like took over their whole life. I've never, all these years I've been, I know, I've never, I don't even know how to treat some.
Oh, yeah.
I have to, I change the water, I put in extra fry, and take it, kind of crazy.
It's like
I put a whole bunch of carbon in there. I put so much carbon in the tank.
Huh?
You know what, no one has, but I got it.
I didn't know you brought this.
Yeah,
Oh,
and
now I
what's
know.
left are my four biscuits, they're dead dying. They're so thick and they're big, yeah. And then I've got those breeder plecos that are still hanging on. One of them's got that on. Okay, I know. So I'm like, I'm just gonna like tank out the door. If nothing lives in it, I'm just getting rid of the tank.
Snowball. It's not. Here's Bloody Mary.
That's what it looks like.
Or-
I saw them.
They close at 40.
All the Allen type. Similar.
Yeah.
You know, and I, every day I don't understand. But. Something that's. Oh, oh, yeah, I think mine knows what that is. I bet you'll know exactly what she does it with the perfect egg. Yeah, like you can do with eggs,
Like
and you're not-
What is that? Orange. Orange.
Oh,
Oh.
find out.
Usually when I take pictures, I usually post
Any-
on
That's right.
Facebook.
Anything.
But last time I posted, I think you or somebody
I know.
told me to take it down.
Well, they said it's fine to post, but don't call out the church.
Just
Yeah, you can say
bluegrass,
Lexington or the Bluegrass.
but not the church.
Yeah, not the
Oh,
church.
okay.
Yeah, that's what they called me and said, can you take down the name of the church? I'll see, I don't have the contact numbers, but I'll see who I can get a hold of.
Eric, I'll take it down.
Yeah.
How do we redo it and put, I usually take pictures down. Good for meetings, so I do people out and so forth.
I love
So,
Yeah.
oh, so, I kind of like to do that. Sometimes I, the pictures are bored. Some of them.
Well, it's kind of, pull those pictures or something like that, do something that other people's taken. Or interested in.
Yeah.
It'd be cool, if we get this thing going. Decades, look back, say, here's a meeting 20 years ago.
Now, if you were in a different spot other than.
Yeah, but, and, I didn't think nothing about the church. I mean, as a somebody, the church was,
Yeah, yeah. That's good. So how long was it?
so we had our first meeting, first, 2019. February of last year.
What?
Yeah, and we couldn't have more meetings between.
Oh, okay.
So that's kind of worried a bit. People come back.
Ready to crap. Used to have it. I split wood. Great park. Fun hope. We did have that one meeting back last June. Church got the auction. ACA shares too. We had one. Yeah. All that power. The son, Chris, got moved the soda store up in Detroit. Had to fly, go to the store, Cincinnati, Sherman Road. All black stick. It was down. Looked great. What? Yeah, we're on hold right now.
Yeah, whether it's- I think we'll have people turn out in person.
You can't see too many people. Sometimes both the age. People, they only put like Don Danko, Bum, Brian, control the site. You can see. Dominant. And the best people who did that. Right now. But they talk about him like we can give nothing but good. Fish, I'm fish, all different types, bread, library, etc. Also in the room, got the swapping table. But anything that option can't stick with it or tap it. It's a good time. I've been going a long time. Haven't missed one yet. Last year. Hope they have this year. Oh, what kind of fish you have?
Right now it's mostly good. Food different stuff. Other faces. Right now.
That's a good life. Got blood shrimp, got cherry shrimp. Other ones up in here, blue, green, shrimp. So they don't let carry come in pushing that. Other than that, any other shrimp I have probably about the fishing. I enjoyed the meeting. Good.
Hopefully we keep getting better as we go.
Yeah.
Figure out what we're doing.
So you have one every other time?
What we're gonna try to do every month, but you know, with all the COVID stuff, we're trying to do online if we can, whatever we can.
Oh, okay.
Hopefully we can get like a regular. It'd be
Yeah.
nice if we could say every third Saturday.
Oh.
Have it that way, people can plan out 3 months in advance.
Our meeting was last Sunday. Cafe last Friday of the month. And perfect study going. Indeed. First Thursday.
Yes, up there. Last
Yeah.
And on Thursday, I don't think I'll make any meetings.
I'll keep you date on it. They've got a fish auction. 20, 28. Yep.
Work's kind of,
If you other guys want to go collecting fish down in Alabama and Florida, nobody tonight. I'm not going to go. I had to travel all the way down to Louisville to meet Bill Flowers and Joseph. The chief, two other guys. This was the fish shop. But other than that, that's what's going on. Just get your days off and watch auction.
Yeah.
Right. Auction off the tank, huh?
yeah, somebody donated this.
God.
45 gallons.
Uh-huh.
So it's missing the center place.
Yeah. You see a lot of things like that. They film, what he's filmed about midway or making aluminum frames, put a huge tape there. I've got one with the wire, and you tighten the bolt and then tighten the tank. Cable wire. And it's still holding up. 15, 20 years now. All right.
Don. Yeah, we'll probably. That's what.
Okay.
You two are doing a great job. I appreciate what you're doing. Hey, that's all you can do. Hey, I know where you're coming from.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how.
Yes, ma'am. Where the bank. But now. Good work. Cincinnati. Can't bust anybody. Just stop the process. There you go.
Yeah.
Are we getting that together? Okay.
So are you want somebody to just grab stuff or say, okay, we got people
No, just the runner, somebody grab something.
and then I'll, okay.
You just look through the sheets for which, because it, hopefully it's got like a code on it, like a might have, whatever.
Yeah.
3.
Some of them.
Yeah, and hopefully he's got something on his.
I mean, it's more fair to.
Okay, yeah, we can.
People to have.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, we're gonna have to go with-
Yeah.
All the money probably spent at the first, we grab all one person's stuff.
Yeah, exactly. That's what. Just whatever. So. Yeah.
So I don't know. Yeah. Keeping that, yeah.
And I wanted.
I think so.
Hope you don't mind me putting my 2 cents in.
Oh, I love it.
No, we need to.
Yeah, okay.
We'll take all the help we can get.
If you have any problem with it,
Yeah. I figure some of you all have a little more experience. Y'all are about ready to start getting the auction going. Anybody want to volunteer to be a auctioneer $3? I get it for everybody.
Yeah, but it's there. Yeah. Yep, I've got the sheet.
okay.
Yeah, we're gonna go with MT1 and MT2. Yeah. And yeah, make that one. There we go. There we go. Yeah. Yeah. And we can do that one up.
You're not gonna be,
Do you want this to run? Do you want that to keep running? So